Welcome to the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor. I'm Pete Bedrossi, I'm the program director here, and our mission at the Hall of Honor is to collect, preserve, and share the stories of Purple Heart recipients. The what question comes up because I'm standing in front of our gallery space that says, why on these grounds? Why was the Hall of Honor built here in New Windsor, New York? It was built here because on May 28, 1932, 136 veterans of World War I awarded their Purple Hearts on these very grounds. We continue today recognizing the sacrifice of those individuals by our mission statement. What is the Purple Heart, however? The Purple Heart is an American military award given to American military personnel wounded or killed by enemy action. The award's birth date, February 22nd, 1932, in honor of the bicentennial of George Washington's birth. Why the connection to the general? Well, at the end of the American Revolution, the general created the badge of military merit to honor meritorious service among his Revolutionary War soldiers, two of whose names were selected not 200 yards from where I'm standing today. Here we are in our entry gallery where the journey begins. A good time to talk about the Purple Heart medal itself, a copy of which is right behind me off my left shoulder. The Purple Heart is awarded to American military personnel who have been wounded or killed by enemy action. When it began in 1932, it was for merit, but the question was raised quickly, does wounding count as merit? And the answer was yes. So at that time, you had to be living, so any living veteran or active duty personnel could apply for their Purple Heart, but immediately questions began to be asked about the Purple Heart. Later on in World War II, it was opened up to all who were killed or wounded by enemy action. It also opened all branches of service. Originally, it was an Army award, but the questions again were raised. What about prisoners of war? Does a prisoner of war qualify if he or she is not in combat at that particular time? Many people thought it was a combat-only award. Over 60 years, the answers to the questions regarding POWs were answered. If you're wounded or killed in the process of being captured, during captivity, or killed in captivity, you are eligible for the Purple Heart. Another question that was raised over the years, what about friendly fire? Meaning you are where people don't know you are there. You're Pat Tillman in Afghanistan, for example, and you are killed by friendly fire. You weren't the target. It was believed you were the enemy. It now qualifies for that award. Again, if you're an artillery spotter and an artillery round falls short on you, the reason was not because you were the target, but it was an error in firing. So that question has been answered as well. In the 1970s and 80s, questions about terrorism began because of American personnel being targeted overseas, particularly in Europe. So over time, the answer has become, if you are wounded or killed by enemy action as a result of international terrorism, you are eligible for Purple Heart. After 9/11, of course, people were happy to hear that the Pentagon personnel were eligible, but then in 2009, the Fort Hood shootings, the question was then raised, what about domestic acts of terrorism? The answer is yes, if that act of terrorism was sponsored by or influenced by a known international terrorist organization. The last kind of area, which is the most gray of the areas, was what about closed head injuries? People have often assumed you have to bleed or be seen to be bleeding to receive a Purple Heart. The answer was no. As long as you are wounded by the enemy, is documented by having been done that way, and treated by medical personnel, you are eligible for the Purple Heart. So that is why we say enemy action today rather than a combat-based award. And as you can see off my left shoulder, that Purple Heart has the profile of George Washington, hearkening back to his badge of military merit. The color of purple in the ribbon, again, a tribute to the badge of military merit. And you'll see a small crest above his head. That is a Washington family coat of arms. Well, let's get back to the museum. We came to see the museum today, and here we are in the Where the Journey Begins gallery. In this gallery, we have a timeline wall of America's military conflicts of the 20th and 21st centuries, branch cases of each of the 5 branches of service, and we have interactive kiosks. We have taken 20 Purple Heart recipients and followed their journey from where the journey begins, to the day of the incident, to the care and treatment they received, and to the road to recovery. Our 5th station is called the Ultimate Sacrifice, and that represents those who died while in service and were killed by the enemy. When you come to this particular gallery, you also have a large case and interactive for the changing nature of the combatant. How do people change from World War I to Operation Iraqi Freedom? On the far wall of our gallery here, we have a temporary exhibit case which honors the chaplaincy. We decided our first temporary exhibit would be Chaplains, and we indeed, in that case, we have two individuals, Yvette Edmonds, a religious affairs specialist, and Conrad Walker, who themselves are Purple Heart recipients. Now, when you follow through this particular gallery, there's a wall of service. It allows you to see incidents and photographs of people being trained, and everything here takes place prior to when you're deployed overseas. I'm going to catch my breath here for a second because I speak at a mile a minute. As you might guess, I get a little dry mouthed. There's also something in our exhibit when you come here, and I hope you will, an interactive timeline of America's military conflicts representing the period from the American Civil War up to today. That's so that people can understand all the conflicts in which we have been involved since the Purple Heart began. I say involved, well, what I really mean is the incident that resulted in the person being awarded the Purple Heart. I mentioned earlier, the award was born in 1932, but originally any living veteran could apply, which means we know of Civil War veterans who have been awarded the Purple Heart. Now, when you come through our exhibit space here, our staff will help you get oriented to the facility. We'll give you a stylus to go look at those interactives. We'll also give you the opportunity to ask questions. After all, we may have put this exhibit together, but we know that it's your first time being here. Very nice to have someone say, gee, explain that artifact to me. Some of our artifacts in our cases actually are from original recipients from the 1932 award ceremony, which I mentioned earlier on, that took place on these very grounds. And when you see a name mentioned here, either in our interactive kiosks or in the exhibit cases, all of those people are enrolled in a roll of honor here, which I'll talk about later in our program today. And here we are at what I would call our main gallery. When the Hall of Honor opened in 2006, this actually room was the main gallery of the exhibit space. As a matter of fact, we recently reopened November of 2020 with a major remodeling. The first gallery you saw us in today was the expanded version of the Hall of Honor. So we've been here since 2006, but our current face has been here only since November of 2020. Now, this gallery I'm standing in now, you'll see behind me a small portion of a Huey helicopter. We have a Huey helicopter fuselage here, which indeed is from the Vietnam era. We don't believe it actually flew overseas, but it has been restored to its 1969 time frame to bring you back to the Vietnam era. This particular gallery, in the space I'm standing in, represents the day of the incident. When we mentioned before about the stages that we have, the day of the incident is the place where something happens to that person, resulting in the awarding of the Purple Heart. It might be wounding, it might be a terrorist attack, but in this gallery we represent those particular conditions. We also represent something that's important between here and care and treatment, medical evacuation. And that is the main reason this Huey helicopter is behind me. Because in that helicopter, you can probably see flashing on the screen some video, we follow evacuation from the battlefield from 1862 until today. So it's an interesting way of looking at things. As a matter of fact, you look in our galleries here, we also have stories of individual recipients. If you look at the wall to my right, well, your left, or when you come in here, you'll see it. There's a story about a Spanish-American war veteran who was transported by ox cart and stretchers over miles of bumpy road before he got treated by a doctor. One of the things we also can do here in the Hall of Honor, besides having static exhibits like this, we have our personal story cases. In our personal story cases, we highlight the stories of individuals with artifacts and their stories. One of our first responder stories we have in this particular area, which covers, in a sense, both day of incident and care and treatment, is Samuel Carlucci. Samuel Carlucci was a World War II Navy corpsman.
He was on Saipan with the Marines. He was going to treat Marines, and at the time, as he went to one gravely wounded Marine, he was rocked back by a wound to his chest. Carlucci realized he was too severely wounded himself to render further aid, but instead of calling out for a medic or corpsman, he crawled back up the hill, went back to the aid station and said, "Oh, by the way, there's a Marine so many yards down the hill, please go take care of him," before his own wounds were actually treated. And that's a common thread for our first responders here. And Darby Reynolds was in Vietnam on Christmas Eve 1964. Her barracks were bombed by the Viet Cong. She raced downstairs, went into the operating room, and the following morning someone said, "Darby, there's blood all around you. Is that yours?" She had been wounded by glass and shrapnel and had yet to treat herself. And she was put on a table. At that time, one of her suite mates came by and showed her another person in the barracks who had been crushed under the building. He looked at her and said, "Darby, please don't let me die." She held his hand as he passed away. But again, she did not think of her own injuries, but aiding those all around her. This gallery we have in here also contains the other parts of our journey, the care and treatment and the road to recovery. And one of our cases here is the changing nature of warfare. We had the changing nature of the combatant. Now the changing nature of warfare covers weapons and equipment that run against the American Civil War through the modern era. There's also a large case as we move further south in our gallery called Care and Treatment, and that chronicles the different ways people have been treated for 2.5 centuries. It's an interesting case because we have in there Civil War era surgical kits, modern and quick clot bandaging, and the highlight of that case are 2 prosthetic arms. One called the Carnes arm from World War I, which was a marvel of its day with a button to open and close your hand, and the other arm we have is a Luke arm. The Luke arm is one of the second generation neuromuscular prostheses which would allow the person to even pick up a paper cup and drink from it without spilling the contents of the cup. And that's an amazing journey from 100 years from World War I through 2010 or so to see that change in the ability to provide prostheses for our soldiers and sailors and airmen. When you go to our care and treatment area, what you find is this is the treatment that you receive as you have been removed from the battlefield. The battlefield itself is no place for great treatment, but care and treatment means the hospital that you are in. That hospital might be a field hospital, a general hospital, but it's usually before you come back home to the United States, at least prior to Iraq and Afghanistan. As we did in the Day of the Incident area of our exhibits, in care and treatment, we have another very interesting personal story case, Beatrice Mary McDonald. Beatrice McDonald is the first known woman to have been awarded a Purple Heart. Beatrice was a nurse who went to World War I with her surgeon. She was at a British clearing hospital being bombed by the Germans. The shrapnel ruined her right eye, which was removed. She was offered evacuation, and Beatrice said, "I can't leave. I have to do my bit." They gave her a prosthetic eye. She went back into the field. She suffered what we would now know as PTSD. They pulled her back to be a supervisor in France. She returned home in 1919. At that time, she was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross. She also received the French Croix de Guerre, the British Red Cross, and the British Military Medal, making her most likely the most highly decorated American woman of World War I. Sometime in late 1935, as all veterans who had to apply for them for the Great War, she applied for a Purple Heart, and on January 4th, 1936, Beatrice McDonald was awarded a Purple Heart for wounds received August 17th, 1917. But when you go to care and treatment, there's another step in the process. You have to come home. In the road to recovery area, we have stories and exhibits and artifacts about how people come back home. The road to recovery, for some it's a quick journey. Others it's a lifetime of change. One of the ways people can do that is service animals. Samuel Deed's dog Echo's first service vest is on display here, as is Kevin Wallace's spirit kite. Kevin Wallace was an Air Force photographer wounded in Afghanistan, and to help heal himself, he took the uniform he was wearing and he made a spirit kite out of that, and we have images of that on display here. Other people in their road to recovery have a very different pathway. Norman Bussell was a World War II Army Air Force veteran who was shot down and captured by the Germans in April of 1944. When Norman came back home, he had difficulty adjusting to civilian life. Norman then moved back to Memphis, his hometown, With the Memphis Belle, the first B-17 to complete 25 missions, was on display. Norman, self-treated with alcohol, took a bottle with him, went into the aircraft, would take a few sips, would fall asleep, and said, when I went to sleep, I heard the B-17's engines running and my crew members calling out from their positions. When I woke in the morning, my hands did not shake, I wasn't sweating, and my nightmares had dissipated. Over the few years, he was still in Memphis. On numerous occasions, he went to the Belle to go, I guess, self-treat. Ironically, he pointed out, the thing that almost killed him was the place that gave him the most rest. Well, when you go from the road recovery, for some people there is no recovery because they have died in service. Our last gallery for visitors to see is the Ultimate Sacrifice Gallery. In that gallery, we represent the final stage. Grieving Rituals, we have the kiosk there, the interactive, and in that we have 45 or so people represented who died while in service. One of the highlights of that area is the 5 Gold Star family members' interviews. A gold star lapel pin signifies you have lost a son or daughter in warfare. We have brothers, sisters, and parents speaking about the loved one that they lost. We also have, in that particular interactive case, voiceover talent reading last letters home and such to let you as the visitor have a small piece of that process. Among them, the 5 Sullivan brothers. The 5 Sullivans insisted on serving together during World War II. They're on the same ship, the USS Juno. When it was sunk at the Naval Battle of Guadalcanal, all 5 brothers were lost. Their mother, Alida Sullivan, wrote the Navy Department saying, I have heard a rumor that my 5 sons have been killed in action. I'd like to find out if this rumor is true. Regrettably, the answer was yes. Well, President Roosevelt heard of this particular situation and wrote a condolence letter to the family himself. That letter is also being read for visitors to hear about. It provides an amazing piece of American military history of the Sullivan brothers being commemorated by the President of the United States. When you go in that gallery, we have a wall, the opposite of the service wall, which provides us with images of the grieving rituals, whether it's the graveside rituals, it's the playing of taps. In one of our local recipients, Mohsin Naqvi, a Muslim man from Pakistan, American citizen, is grieving with the prayers of his father and the men of his particular mosque. So it's a way of showing all people how many kinds of ways we can grieve. Now, one of the things we have that precedes, I shouldn't have jumped ahead, excuse me for doing that, we have what's called a lenticular wall. And when you go into the galleries, you may think, oh, my eye is deceiving me because the images changes. There are images of recipients from when they were in service to how they appear today. And the idea there is to show you that history may have happened long ago, but never far away. Your friends, your neighbors, your relatives may all be out there and be Purple Heart recipients. Many recipients do not speak much of their experiences as Purple Heart recipients. And this is a way for us to show you that those all around you might be recipients of this award. But how do we show how we do this award? One of the difficult processes we have is, as there is no master list of recipients for us to draw upon, we rely upon enrollments from the recipients, their families, and friends. You go enrollments, so what does that mean? We have a roll of honor. It is a computerized database of Purple Heart recipients. We have in the hall here 6 computer terminals that can show you those stories, and you at home can see those stories by going on our website, www.thepurpleheart.com, and there you can find recipients from the American Civil War to today. Those recipients, if you count the date of incident, run from April 6th, 1862, Warren J. Coates, wounded Shiloh, Tennessee. He got his award in 1932, by the way, to Zachary Cayley, who was wounded in Afghanistan, June 9th of 2020. Now, more awards have been made since then, but that represents the timeline of our recipients. It's a way for us to really show you the mission statement of how we collect, preserve, and share the stories of Purple Heart recipients. It's a great way to see things. If you come to the hall itself, you also may see every month we change the featured recipients. This month is August. Our featured recipients are those in the U.S. Coast Guard because August is the anniversary month, or birthday month, of the U.S. Coast Guard. Okay, now we have some time left over because I tend to speak really fast. I cover lots of things. So what else can we say about this particular part of our journey in the Hall of Honor? one of the things we like to do is we like to escort people around. Why? When those of us who are involved in creating this facility did this, we forget each time you see it is the very first time. Are there other stories we can tell you? Certainly there are. If you'd like to hear more of those stories, come forward to me. We'll meet you in front of our galleries and tell you about what we do. We're not talking about the gallery. Now here we are at the very entrance of our facility, going full circle in our journey today, and to my right is a statue of 3 soldiers. It represents a rescue from basically the Battle of the Bulge in 1944. The life-size figures were actually modeled by the sculpting companies, the fabrication company's own staff. So yes, those are real faces of real people, and they represent a lieutenant, a wounded soldier, and an Army medic. Now our facility is open 6 days a week. We're open Tuesdays through Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and on Sundays, 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. We're closed on Mondays, but every so often the holidays, we are open, so please give us a call, and you can reach us at area code 845-561-1765. Again, our number is 845-561-1765. Now, we all are open, of course, for visitors to come in as they wish. There is no fee to enter this facility. However, we do also have group visits, large group tours come in from veterans organizations or leaf peeping and history-loving tours. We also run an educational program called Soldiers Across Time. This allows us to give school children the experience of the Hall of Honor through 160 years of American military history. It is an interactive program and allows kids to really get involved with our exhibits here. Something else that goes on here, we have programs and activities throughout our year. Now with the COVID environment, we've kind of got a slow start this year, but we are going to have a program for Veterans Day on November 11th, and we're planning, details to follow, a program on Sunday, December 5th, to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the attack on Pearl Harbor. It's a very important anniversary for us here in the United States. We chose to have ours on Sunday because there are local ceremonies that will be conducted on December 7th itself. But the venue here is appropriate for this event. We have a large number of the people who were killed or wounded at Pearl Harbor enrolled in our database. So I encourage you, if you're in the area, to follow our Facebook page and our website for details on our upcoming events for Veterans Day and for Pearl Harbor. Questions. So people often ask us questions. And one of the questions is, hey, you know, my grandfather, my great-grandfather was in World War I. Didn't he get a Purple Heart? And the answer is, well, maybe. Since the Purple Heart was not created until 1932, those World War I veterans actually had to apply for their own awards. So if you read the newspapers and heard there's a Purple Heart Award, you could literally apply for your own award as a World War I wounded veteran, which means you had a wound chevron. So it was not automatic. And it was not until 1962, as a matter of fact, that those World War I individuals killed in action could receive the Purple Heart. Their families, of course, had to apply on their behalf. Similarly, one might say, well, didn't my grandfather, who was wounded in World War II, get a Purple Heart? The answer is he was eligible, but whether he received it or not, the fog of war, casualty issues, sometimes people's awards that should have been made were not made. So it isn't a question of someone not being eligible, just not being aware. Now we get questions here all the time, different various and sundry questions about people and who had a Purple Heart and who didn't have a Purple Heart. One of them is, didn't Douglas MacArthur get the first Purple Heart? And the answer is no. Douglas MacArthur signed the order on February 22nd, 1932. The men who came here to our site to receive their awards in 1932 or in May, the general did not put in his own application of his own Purple Hearts from World War I until July of 1932. As a result, he did not get the first one, but the orders authorizing his award said, we will label his medal number 1. And there comes in the story, which raises an interesting point. I said Purple Hearts. You only should receive one medal. You receive an oak leaf cluster for the Army or the Air Force, or a gold star for the Coast Guard or the Navy or the Marine Corps. That signifies a second injury or your death. In the case of two of our recipients in Ultimate Sacrifice, Barney Bogdansky and Johnny Millen, each of them had another device indicating 2 incidents. So that's the story with that. One of the other questions that arise, how many badges of military merit were there? We only can verify that there were 3. As I mentioned at the very beginning, Elijah Churchill, William Brown, and Daniel Bussell. Many thoughts and questions have been raised over the years, but to the best of our knowledge, only 3 were awarded during the Revolutionary War era. Others of our questions have come up over the years have been, hey, didn't animals get the Purple Heart? And the answer is actually, officially, no. Sergeant Stubby, the World War I dog, you see on his vest the stuffed Stubby. I'm stumbling over the words. Yes, someone put a miniature Purple Heart on the vest in the Smithsonian, but Sergeant Stubby died in 1926. There was an attempt in World War II to award war dogs that was rescinded. So the awards you see on animals are unofficial awards of the Purple Heart for animals. I know it's much more cute if it's the animal, but regrettably that's not the particular case with that. One of the other things that arises here in our Hall of Honor is trying to figure out how many awards have been made. Well, no one knows for sure because it's in your records if you are the recipient, but those data are not shared to create lists of award recipients. The only American military award that has a comprehensive list as of today is the Medal of Honor. I was asked a question last weekend, by the way, by someone saying, oh, isn't it true that if you have a Medal of Honor, you automatically receive a Purple Heart? And no. There are a number of incidents of people who have been awarded the Medal of Honor who weren't wounded or killed. I don't know how that happened. A good example is John Basilone from the Battle of Guadalcanal. John Basilone received his Medal of Honor, was awarded for his actions at Guadalcanal. He was kept out of service but insisted on returning, and when he was on Iwo Jima in 1945, John Basilone was killed. But that was not at all connected to his Medal of Honor. So John Basilone indeed has a Purple Heart completely separate from his Medal of Honor. The same can be said of Douglas MacArthur and Theodore Roosevelt Jr. Those individuals all had Purple Hearts and Medals of Honor, but the incidents were not the same for either of those 3 individuals. So I want to thank you for coming by today. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about my facility. As you might guess by my rate of speech and things I throw in there, there's not a moment I'm going to be speechless or out of breath. So I invite you to come to the National Purple Heart Hall of Honor. We are a New York State facility under the jurisdiction of the Palisades Interstate Park Commission. We are the only facility that's doing this. The national in our name tells you who we represent. Everyone. That's all 50 states, Puerto Rico, Guam, Samoa and the Philippines. And oh, by the way, how do you get here? To GPS us, we're at 374 Temple Hill Road, New Windsor, New York, zip code 12553. Goodbye, and I hope to see you.